Hi, I'm Chad with Move for Guitar. This lesson is from our series Music Theory for Guitar. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to look at a chord progression or a song that includes 7th chords in it and figure out what key it's in. First off, if you like the diagrams for everything in this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Music Theory for Guitar. And this e-guide will be something that you can study and use as a reference for years to come. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to just go download it. But I am working on it as I'm filming this lesson, so if it's available, a link will pop up on the screen that will allow you to download it. If no link appears, you can look in the description and it'll say whether it's available or coming soon. And if it's not available yet, you can sign up for our mailing list and we'll send you a copy as soon as it is available. Also, if you're signed up for our mailing list, you'll receive all updated versions as well. But don't worry, you don't need the e-guide to follow along with this lesson because all of the charts will be on the screen. And also be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day. This is part 3.12 from our series Music Theory for Guitar. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So in the last lesson we talked about chord progressions that had 7th chords in them, and in this lesson we're going to look at chord progressions with 7 chords in them and figure out what key they're in. So we're not going to know what key they're in to begin with, and this is the exact same thing that we did when we were looking at chord progressions with triads. And it is important to be able to do it with 7th chords as well. Even though the concept's the same, it can actually be easier to figure out the key with 7th chords because there's some extra ways that you can quickly tell what key it's in. And I'll explain that as we're going through these chord progressions. And again, this is a really important thing to be able to do. You need to be able to look at a song or any type of chord progression and figure out what key it's in. That's something you have to get good at and something that you need to do quickly. And you don't have to get really quick at it right now. You have this chart that I'm going to go over with you like we did before that you're going to be able to use and look it up, and over time you'll be able to do it quickly, so don't think you have to get really frustrated trying to figure this out right now. But it is something, the more advanced you are, the more you play, that you have to be able to do quickly, especially when you're playing with other musicians or coming across a new song and you want to know how to solo on it or do anything on it. You need to be able to do this. And just like we've been doing this whole time, everything's going to be diatonic to one key. We're not looking at chord progressions that go out of one key, so it's going to be fairly simple. We'll get into more advanced chord progressions that do that later on, but it's important to be able to do this with just one key because lots and lots of popular songs are in just one key. So we're just going to take a random chord progression to start, and it'll be F major, B flat major 7, C major, and B flat major. And we're going to look back at our diagram, this chart right here, and figure out what key it's in. And the first thing you can notice is that it's all major chords. So it's 3 major chords, even though it looks like it's more. The B flats are both just a major chord. They're both built off the B flat major triad. It's just this one has the extra 7th in it, so it's a B flat major 7. So if we look at our diagram, we're going to start with the F major because that was the first chord in the progression. So we're going to start in the major, the first major column, and look through here for an F, which obviously would be in the key of F. The next chord was B flat major 7, so then we need to look through this and see if there's a B flat. There is right here, and then we need to see if it's a major 7, and it is, so both of those chords so far are in the key of F. The next chord was a C major, so again we look through the key of F for a C. Here's a C. It is a major, so those 3 chords are in there. And so automatically we already know that's in the key of F because the last chord was a B flat major, which is right here again. It's just instead of it being the major 7, it was just a triad of a major. So this progression is in the key of F. It's a 1, 4, 5, 4 in the key of F. Because we had F was our 1, and then B flat major 7 was our 4, C was our 5, and then we went back to B flat major for our 4 again. So it was a 1, 4, 5, 4. And then next one we have F major 7, G major, E minor 7, and A minor 7. So if we go back to our diagram, start in the first category because it was a major 7. So we're going to start in the first column. That means we're going to go to an F, the key of F to start because we know that our first chord is a major 7 in the key of F. The next chord was G major, so we're going to go through here and find a G. There's a G right here, but it's a minor in the key of F. So automatically we know that that chord progression is not in the key of F. Even though it starts with an F major 7, that's not the key. So now we need to look through our next column of major 7, which starts on the 4 chord, and look for an F. And there's one in the key of C. The next chord was G major, so we look through here in the key of C. For a G major, there's a G right here, and it is a major, so far both those chords are in the key of C. They're a 4 and a 5. The next chord was E minor 7, so we look through the key of C for an E. There's one right here. It is a minor 7, so we know that all 3 chords are in the key of C so far. And then the last chord was an A minor 7, so we look through the key of C for an A. There's an A right here, and it is a minor 7, so all those chords are in the key of C. And they end up being a 4, 5, 3, 6 in the key of C. And that's something you have to be aware of, just like when we went over triads. Just because a chord progression starts with a certain chord, a certain major chord, it doesn't mean it's going to necessarily be in that key. For example, here it's in the key of C, but we started with the 4 chord, which is F major 7. So don't think that you can just look at the first chord of a chord progression and know what key it's in. It doesn't work like that all the time, even though it does happen often. Now we're going to go to another one that's going to be a little different, and this one is A major 7, E major, C sharp minor 7. So if we look at our diagram, we're going to start with an A major 7, so that's in the first column because we have an A major 7. We know that would be in the key of A, so it's right here. The next chord was E major, so if we go through the key of the key of A and look for an E, there's one right here, and it is a major, so both of those chords are in the key of A so far. They're a 1 chord and a 5 chord. The next chord was a C sharp minor 7, and if we look through the key of A, we have a C sharp, and it is a minor 7, so we know that all 3 of those chords are in the key of A. They're a 1 chord, a 5 chord, and a 3 chord. But we actually have another option as well. That is a likely option for the key that it's in, but these 3 chords actually do work in another key. So if we look back at our chart and we start with the A major 7, we found it in the 1 column the first time. Now we need to look at the next column, which is the 4 chord, has a major 7. That's the only other place it could be. So that means that going through here and finding an A in this column automatically tells us it's in the key of E. Because we already figured out that it could be in the key of A, and the only other place that a major 7 happens is in the 4 column, which for an A major 7 that lands in the key of E. So that's the only other key those 3 chords could be in, and then we can check and make sure. The other chord was an E major 7. Obviously the 1 chord in the key of E is an E major 7. And the other one was a C sharp minor 7. If we go through here, there's a C sharp. It is a minor 7, so it does work. So since we figured out that it could be in the key of A, we could also quickly figure out whether it was in another key, because there's only 2 places that a major 7 land. And that's in the 1 chord or the 4 chord. So that chord progression could be a 1, 5, 3 in the key of A, or it could also be a 4, 1, 6 in the key of E. And like I talked about with the other lesson when we were talking about triad chord progressions, you would have to have more information to know what key it was actually in. There's a strong likelihood it would be in the key of A because it's the most common thing to start with the chord that's the key center. But it's not always the case. You could start with the 4 chord easily. That happens all the time too. So you'd have to hear more parts of the song, whether there was more chords that were going to give you a clue, or the melody of the song or something along those lines, the other instrumentation, to be able to tell exactly what key it's in. And then, like I mentioned, there's some things that'll quickly be able to allow you to see what key a song is in when you're dealing with 7th chords. There's some chords or group of chords that will allow you to do that quickly. The first one is anytime you come across a dominant 7 chord, you know it's only in one key. Because when you're talking about major scale keys, the dominant 7 chord only falls on the 5 chord. That's the only place you run across a dominant 7 chord. The other major chords in the major scale are major 7s. So anytime you see a dominant 7 chord and you're only dealing with the major scale key in one key, diatonic to one key, all you'd have to do is find that 5 chord in this column. So for example, this is a B flat 7. All I would have to do is go to the 5 column, look for a B flat. It's right here. I automatically know that it's in the key of E flat, because there's only one place that a B flat 7 can land in a major scale key, and that's on the 5 chord. And it would be the same for any dominant chord. If I saw in E7, I would automatically look in the 5 column for an E. There's one right here. I would know it's in the key of A because E7 only falls in the key of A when you're talking about major scale keys. Another thing you can look at quickly, just like with the dominant 7, is a minor 7 flat 5. And that's a much less common chord to run across, especially in popular music, but you will see it sometimes. And you'll especially run across it if you get into more advanced blues or jazz. But whether you play those types of music or not, it's important to be able to understand this, because you could come across this in a popular song. It's just not very common. And that's that the minor 7 flat 5 only lands in the 7 spot. So just like the diminished only lands in the 7 spot, a minor 7 flat 5 can only be a 7 chord when you're talking about major scale keys. So if I was looking at this E minor 7 flat 5, all I'd have to do is go to the 7 column, look for an E. It's right here. That would be my E minor 7 flat 5. I automatically know it's in the key of F major. And a couple other things you can quickly visualize is anytime you have two minor 7 chords a whole step apart, for example, a B minor 7 to a C sharp minor 7 is a whole step apart. There's only one place that can be, and that's right here, the 2 and the 3 chord. Those two minor 7 chords are a whole step apart. So if you looked for a B and a C sharp minor, they're right here. You automatically know they're in the key of A, because two minor 7 chords a whole step apart have to land in the 2 and the 3 spot. Another thing that you can quickly see is if you see two major 7 chords. And if you see two major 7 chords and you know that it's only diatonic to one key, you'll automatically be able to figure out what key it's in, because there's only two major 7 chords in each major scale key. But if you're not sure it's in one key, a quick thing to visualize is whether the chords are a fourth apart. For example, this G major 7 to this C major 7, so G to C is a perfect fourth apart, or the reverse, C major 7 to G major 7 is a fifth apart, a perfect fifth. So if you see two major 7th chords, either a fourth apart or a fifth apart, you know they're in one key, not going outside of one key. There's only two major 7 chords in a major scale key on the 1 and the 4. And if they're a fourth apart, you know the first one is the 1 chord and the second one is the 4 chord, because that's a fourth apart right here, a perfect fourth. If they're a fifth apart, you know it's the opposite. You know that the first one is your 4 chord and the second one is your 1 chord, because going back from the C to a G is a fifth apart, a perfect fifth apart. And that one's a little trickier to be able to visualize quickly, but it is something you can memorize to help you. So for example, this first one, this is the 1 chord, this is the 4 chord, and the opposite, going from C major 7 to G major 7, is the opposite. This is the 4 chord, this is the 1 chord, I mean. So those are some ways that you can quickly figure out the key just by looking at 7th chords. That's something different than with triads. You don't have as many clues like that, but With sevenths, there's a few more telltale signs that you can quickly figure out. So that's how to figure out the key of a song or a chord progression just by looking at the chords. You can move on to the next lesson where I'm going to talk about something called the relative minor, and I'm going to talk about relative minor key chord progressions. And that's something really important to understand. And be sure to download the e-guide, it has all these charts in it, and be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.